If you'd like to see how I turned this goat skin into soft leather, then stay tuned. I soaked the goat skin in salt water for a few days, and then I began to scrape the hide. This was my first time butchering or skinning a large animal. I'll focus on doing an even better job skinning next time so that there's less work scraping the hide later. The recommended method is to use a large barrel and an actual scraper to pull the extra pieces of skin and material off of the skin. But in this case, I was able to throw it over my picnic table and use a knife. Here's a good example of a part that I could have done better while skinning and saved myself some work later. As I worked the skin, I noticed that it was easier to get these extra pieces of flesh off while the skin was still heavily wet. I was surprised to see that it's fairly difficult to puncture the skin, but if you're not careful, you'll put a hole in it, so keep that in mind. So I used sea salt, oxalic acid, saddle soap, and eventually some neem oil for this process. I added about 3 cups of sea salt to about 5 gallons of water. This is a 7-gallon bucket, by the way. I don't remember the exact formula, but the oxalic acid came out to about 3/4 of a cup. After I mixed up the solution, I grabbed the skin and threw it in and stirred it up just to make sure that it had good coverage. I left it in the bucket for 4 days, making sure to stir it a couple times a day. After the acid bath, I washed it in homemade soap, which is borax, and laundry powder. The soap is really high in sodium bicarbonate, which is basically baking soda, and that neutralizes the acid. I let it drip dry in my shower, and then I stretched it out and strung it up for a couple weeks. I'm no pro, but now I think I realize I should have pulled it down sooner because the softening process would be easier. This was my first attempt at softening things up, so I grabbed my saddle soap and I just dipped it in water and rubbed it on the skin, and you can hear how hard it is. But I learned to actually just soak a rag and get the saddle soap on there and rub it in quicker that way. I also used the neem oil at the very beginning. I used them both to just kind of get things softened up a little bit, and then I went on to scraping it. I started scraping the skin with the waffle side of the hammer and with the claw back and forth, and I would continually add more saddle soap and more neem oil and continue to scrape it that way. It was a lot of work. I was really sweating hard and just kind of considering it sets of workouts, just, scrape really hard, get through the entire thing, and then do it again. But by now you can see it's starting to soften up and drape over the edges of the freezer. I got more confident with soaking the entire hide really well with the rag and the neem oil and the saddle soap, and it just got softer and softer, and there was nothing to it but to continue to do it until it got soft enough that I was happy. The entire experience was new to me, but it was fun to learn something new, and I'm going to harvest a few more goats, and eventually I'm going to piece it all together and make maybe a queen-sized comforter. Appreciate you guys for watching. Leave a comment if you got any questions, and I'll catch you on the next one.